some girl had texted me, and I from a random number who knew me from, and I had told her, get lost, I'm married, I'm happily married. And I was, upset about the way that when I brought it to you that, and it was that's a completely different, right? Like I could have had a different conversation with you about that.
That's also the way you just described it too is how a lot of people get. It feels almost like a fencing match or something.
Yeah.
Like you're just in defense. You're just defending, and you're defending, I'm defending. And so nothing's actually getting resolved. It is exhausting to talk about and defend and just be in this emotional place for as long as we were, but at least we get to the bottom of it.
And I think this is a common pattern, right? And I think a lot of people will relate to this because I often felt the same way. I think we both felt the same way. And the reason why is because, look, you come to me with issue A, right? In the process of presenting it, I'm triggered, and now it becomes issue B. Now, when I'm talking about issue B, it triggers you because of something I say. Now there's issue C. And now that one spins me off into issue D, and then E and F. And so we're not having a full conversation. We're jumping to this one, and it's like there's this stacked up thing. And then when we try to unwind the stack and it's like, I don't even remember. I know I'm really frustrated, but I don't even know why. It's somewhere buried in there because we jumped to so many places. And so, I mean, one of the things that we had talked about, which I think is a good thing to implement, is don't bring up a different thing, like address that separately afterwards, because it was, that's something that we both have the tendency to do, right? Like I think at one point the thing had spiraled into, some girl had texted me, and I from a random number who knew me from, and I had told her, get lost, I'm married, I'm happily married. And I was, upset about the way that when I brought it to you that, and it was that's a completely different, right? Like I could have had a different conversation with you about that. Like we could have had this conversation, dealt with the thing that you were talking about. And then at some other point I could have said, hey, by the way, there's something that isn't sitting well with me that I'd like to talk to you about, right? But by putting it into this one...
Well, and you did that after I tried to come to you and hugged you and kissed you and told you I loved you. Instead of saying any of that back or making me feel like you were in the same place as me, you decided to open up a new grievance. And so that's also the way you just described it too is how a lot of people get. It feels almost like a fencing match or something. Like you're just in defense. You're just defending, and you're defending, I'm defending. And so nothing's actually getting resolved. And then people are just throwing out things that hurt them. And then, then you're defending that. And then because they're just, everybody's just trying to bring up all the things that have hurt them in the whole and history often, of the world.
And what happens, at least the thing that I know is like, because you said, you hugged me and then I was like, I'm being listened to. Now let me talk about this thing that, and so, but that's not.
Which probably would have worked if we did it the right way. That we'll get into because we need to get into that as well too. But it was just a big mixture of a lot of stuff, but I think we did learn a lot from it. Like you said, at least that's it is exhausting to talk about and defend and just be in this emotional place for as long as we were, but at least we get to the bottom of it. But even during that conversation, I was like, I think we need to learn how to communicate in a different way because there had been plenty of times where we are ruining a whole day by talking. And
for sure.
It's not ruining because we are learning things, but it's ruined in the sense of we didn't show up here. And we're not even eating dinner at a decent time because we're still talking about something or, we're exhausted because we've been in this emotional state for so long. So even during that conversation, I was like, we need to figure out a better way to do this.
And just for clarification, during that time, even though we're having an 8-hour, 10-hour, we're not slamming doors and screaming at each other. And, we're we're
It's
talking and talking in circles and circles. Like that's what we do. And then eventually,
which is also frustrating, right? Like to feel like you're talking in circles. Because there was one point where you were trying to talk to me about your problems and then you just kept saying the same stuff over and over again. And like, instead of it making, I mean, it made sense to me the first time you said it. But then when you kept saying it, I'm like, is he trying to hurt me by keep saying this? Like, what is his point? And then I tried to be like, you know, I feel like you're focusing on the negative, like we've talked about this, and then you're like, you're not listening to me, you know, like, so it's like, even if you're trying to do the right thing in the moment or like trying to help somebody, it can get so jumbled up
that
in the moment that now you're back in another loop, right? Because that's where we ended up when I was like, I feel like you're kind of focused, like, how can we move past this? Like, I want to help you, and you're like, you're not listening to me, you're not really listening. And so it's like, it's so easy to be disconnected from one another, even if you feel like you're very connected to the person that you're with.
Right.
And so that's why, you know, the things that we learned after this conversation, I feel like will help people because they helped us realize what we were doing wrong and how we can do better and have, you know, more emotional capacity at the end of a conversation rather than wearing ourselves out by talking all day.
And I think one of the things with that too is it's, you know, one of the lessons learned was the idea that when someone is sharing where they're at or, you know, trying to be understood, sharing their, as a person listening, you don't get to say when they're done. They get to say when they're done. And it doesn't always make sense. It's like, you know, when you're trying to get out what's going on, sometimes you need to just keep on going for a while. And it's like, and the other person needs to just listen and empathize and hear you fully. Because when, you know, a person tends to keep on going until they feel like they're fully understood, right? And that's really when their emotions are validated. Because a lot of times I think people will want to cut it short. They'll say, you know, the person A will say, all right, this is what you did. This hurt me, whatever. Person B says, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I don't want to hurt you. And then they're like, person B is like, okay, so it's done, it's settled. But it's not for A, because A still has, like, even though you've said I'm sorry, the person still needs to.
Which you've been on.